Chapter 35. Amsterdam loves Danny Boy. When I came back to Atlanta, I was broke and alone. I had started living with a guy, but that situation wasn't working out. Soon, I was going back and forth between Atlanta and Kimberla's home in Knoxville. I was leading praise and worship at a local church, but it felt like just a job. I was missing my own church. I needed to hear a word from Pastor Pollard. My soul felt empty. My life, my faith, my confidence, and my trust were low. Sometimes I really didn't know which way to go. I didn't know how to fix the relationships that had been broken, and I couldn't make up for the time that I missed in my children's lives. I had been separated from Ari for a full year, and many things had changed. I was no longer hurt about our separation. I was focused on my relationship with my son. I grew to understand that some relationships were only for a season. In the words of the Whispers, the beat goes on. Over the years, I had formed a friendship with artists and promoters in Amsterdam. I was always well received. In Amsterdam, I experienced a level of success that I hadn't in the States. The first time I went to Amsterdam was to do a benefit concert that Mama Jeanette put together for the Moluccan prisoners. What began as a one-time trip soon turned into an annual event. Each year, I would fly into Amsterdam and share my gift of song. It was during my first visit to Amsterdam that I found Café Today. It was a place where I could enjoy some of its finest herbs. There, I could finally relax and ease my mind. Amsterdam was so liberal. It didn't matter what people's lifestyle choice was. They were human. No one cared if I smoked weed. They didn't care if I was gay or bisexual. Amsterdam was good for me. I would always hear people playing Tupac's music. It amazed me that I could meet people so far away from home who shared the same love for Pac's music as people back in the States. I wish Pac could have had a chance to see how many people he influenced and how many lives he touched. I had been in Amsterdam for a couple of weeks when I was dealt another blow. Marcus, my childhood friend, had been murdered in Chicago. I was listening to Frank Sinatra when I got a message on Facebook. "Give Cicely a call. Her brother passed last night." I was crushed. Marcus and I had known each other since grade school. He had been so supportive of my career. During the times he was locked up, he would call me from jail and ask me to sing. I would sing for the other inmates too. By the time we got off the phone, I would have done a full concert. Losing him hurt like hell. I couldn't make it to Marcus's funeral. I wanted to be there. I was supposed to be there. He was my brother. On the day of his service, I stayed in the house all day, and I cried every time I thought about what I was missing at the funeral. Perhaps it was better that I wasn't there. Whenever I closed my eyes and imagined him in that casket, it would take me to a dark place. Just knowing how strong our brotherhood was gives me comfort. I know that we will meet again. Chapter 36. Blood, Sweat, and Tears. When I got back to Atlanta, it was around the holidays. I was happy to be back in the States, but I didn't have anywhere to stay. I had a friend who told me that I could stay with him. When he found out that I was struggling, he offered to help me. It was the first time that a guy was there for me in that way. He was a nurturer. George met me at the airport and took me back to his place in Buckhead. By this time, I had been with a few men, but I was still on the down low. I was hiding. But we were living at the Darlington. It was a building that was a known hangout for gay men. Things started out sweet, but by the time the holidays had passed, we were over. February 7th, 2011. Ever since my mom's passing, February 7th had been a hard day for me. I thought it might help if I got high. One of my friends had a pill that he called a bean. I decided that I would pop one to try and suppress the pain I was feeling, but the pill made me paranoid. I felt like I was on a roller coaster. When I finally came down, I slept hard. I didn't wake up until the next afternoon, February 8th, 2011. I slept the morning away. When I finally woke up, it was almost 3 p.m. I couldn't get out of bed to save my own life. When I got up and looked at my phone, I noticed that I had a ton of missed calls and messages, all from Chicago numbers. I called the number of the last missed call. It was my sister, Tina. When she answered, the first thing she said was, "Boy, we've been trying to call you all day. Your daddy dead." It was like I was in a dream. I really couldn't believe what she was telling me. I hung up the phone and called my sister Peaches. My dad had been living with her. When my nephew Greg answered the phone, he started crying before I could even ask. It was true. My father had passed away on the same day as my mother had 17 years prior. To make matters worse, it was Greg's birthday. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. How could something like this be happening? Once again, I started making plans to leave Atlanta. I felt like I was about to lose my mind. I was grieving both of my parents at the same time. When I arrived at the airport, I could see my sister's bright smile from a distance. Peaches and I were my father's only children, though my father happily raised all of my mother's children. When I got to her, she had tears rolling down her face. I hated seeing my sister like that because she had always been the one to stop me from crying. I wanted to be there for her, but I couldn't get myself together. When we sat down to plan my father's funeral, we were hit with another blow. His insurance had been canceled because they were unable to withdraw the monthly payment. My sister could see my despair. It hurt that I couldn't afford to bury my father. "Don't worry. We gonna do what need to be done for Daddy," she said. "Don't worry about a thing." As we moved forward with the arrangements, we hit another snag. There was no one to eulogize my father. The preachers that knew him were too spiritual to speak over my father. Even people in my family said no. My father was a good guy who was rooted in the community. He was always willing to help people out. It was sad that no one felt compelled to speak for a man who had given so much of himself. Theology aside, he was a child of God. As we went about looking for a pastor, someone suggested that my sister and I deliver the eulogy. It was decided. We would do just that. At the end of the day, I realized that it was all a part of the Master's plan. All of the studying and preparing that I had done that whole week had gone out the window. I couldn't remember a thing. I couldn't read a thing off the paper. God just showed up and spoke through me. I was used as a vessel to give a word to the people. When we got up to speak for our father, we did our best to honor his memory. I had always dreamed of giving my first sermon, looking out into the audience of people, and seeing my daddy smiling back at me. I never would have imagined that I would be doing it at his funeral. I always prayed that he'd have the opportunity to hear me. And though my daddy was no longer there in the flesh, God fixed it so that he could hear me preach. It was church in the most untraditional way. I believe that somebody was saved that day. It's amazing how God works. After my father's death, I started working with my friend at his new jazz club and bar. That's where I met Robert. When I met him, I told him that I was going to kidnap him. After about a week or so, that's just what I did. My relationship with Robert was my first serious relationship with a man. We would spend all of our free time together. But soon that would come to an end. When we broke up, it was hard for me to shake. Chapter 37. Grandma Williams. My cousin wrote me on Facebook and informed me that Grandma Williams had passed away. She told me that my uncle was the one that discovered her. Mrs. Williams wasn't my grandmother by birth, but she never treated me any differently than her own grandchildren. I was a part of her family. I had even lived with her in the years before I was signed to death row. She had so much to do with the man I grew to become. When the family asked me to deliver her eulogy, I was both afraid and elated. It was an honor. Despite the occasion, I was glad to be home. It was a dark time in my life, and I needed to be around my family and friends. I needed to be around people who loved me. I ended up staying in Chicago that entire summer. Had it not been for my cousin Isha and her husband Quincy, I wouldn't have had a dime in my pocket. They gave me a job working for their moving company. I was going out just about every day moving furniture, boxes, pianos, you name it. If it was movable, I moved it. As the summer came to an end, I felt like I had worn out my welcome. My godfather had been trying to get me to come to Ohio for a while. It would give me an opportunity to mellow out before I returned to Atlanta. My godfather had spent much of his life in the music business. In fact, that's how we met. When I was on the road with Norman Connors, Pops took me under his wing. He was sort of an adopted godfather,